Many people tell me that the therapeutic garden projects we do are very innovative and very new. And I tell them that nothing like that, in fact, quite the opposite. Many centuries ago, hospitals installed annex gardens with therapeutic purposes, but all this changed a few decades ago when we went totally crazy with asphalt and lost that important relationship. But fortunately, that is changing in recent years. Join me on a journey into the past where we will take a tour through history and learn about the close relationship that has always existed between gardens and hospitals. My name is Albert Cervera, and I am specialized in the humanization of organizations and the creation of therapeutic gardens. Join me. When we trace the history, we can see a common thread of belief in the importance of exposure to fresh air, exposure to sunlight, access to nature, and working the land as positive contributions to the healing process. But okay, let's start that journey. Let's start with ancient Greece. One of the first spaces known as a healing garden was the Temple of Asclepius at Epidaurus, built as early as the 6th century BC. It was a place with open views and a natural forest landscape, and we will make a stop on this journey in the Middle Ages. Throughout the Middle Ages, monastic hospices with large gardens were very typical. During this period, the figure of Hildegard von Bingen, a German physician, had a special relevance in encouraging the ability to heal from these natural elements. The monasteries as hospital spaces stood out for having large gardens followed by corridors with these typical porticos, where the sick could walk with abundant vegetation and could also rest, or in the covered portico, or in the courtyard garden, where there were often trees, and could take shelter under their shadows if necessary. They could also walk along the paths and sit on the lawns and benches. Saint Bernard described it very well, referring to his patients at the Hospice de Clairvaux in France, relating the benefits they enjoyed by staying outdoors, stimulating the 5 senses and comforting these sick people. And now we go to the 17th century with the English hospital. The English hospital had large buildings and extensive gardens. The garden was experienced as a refuge, and yet illness was associated with the building. I like very much the recommendations for garden design written by the German horticultural theorist Christian K. Lorenz at the end of the 18th century, which I will tell you about. The garden should be directly connected to the hospital. Having views from the window onto happy blooming scenes will revitalize the patient and encourage him to take a stroll. Plantings should meander along dry paths that offer benches. Spaces could have beautiful gardens and colorful flower beds. Everything necessary to enjoy nature and promote healthy living. And now we are approaching the end of the 19th century, where the sanatoriums to cure tuberculosis were born. They are equipped with wheeled beds that allow patients to move closer to gardens and porches so that they can sunbathe and breathe fresh air. It was also at that time that sanatoriums for the mentally ill began to make use of outdoor space. In many cases, gardening and agriculture began to be used as part of their therapies. And we go to the period between the 20th century until the 90s or so. In these decades, the priorities in the construction of hospitals changed completely. You know, there was the Industrial Revolution, 2 world wars, and gardens became much less frequent in hospitals, as buildings were created that focused on reducing the risk of infection and serve as functionally efficient settings for the new medical technology that was being created. Hospitals were beginning to be replaced by monobloc buildings, seeking to be as efficient as possible while being at the service of science and technology. Park and garden areas were replaced by parking lots for vehicles, and over time these buildings have been considered stressful and inadequate for the needs of the patient, companions, and hospital staff. And now we go to the last phase, what I call the New Renaissance. From about 1990 to the present day, when it seemed that this relationship between nature and hospital was touched and sunk, the American psychologist Robert Ulrich appeared in 1984 and brought about a renaissance in the hospital garden movement. Ulrich showed that patients with a view of the outdoors from their hospital bed recovered much faster after surgery and past the time of surgery, spending less time in the hospital than those who had no view of the outside and looked at a wall. The latest research shows that stress and psychosocial factors affect patients' health outcomes. The large generation of scientific evidence demonstrating the benefits of healing gardens on patient stress and improved health outcomes have led to a resurgence of international interest in the creation of therapeutic gardens. And this is not only happening with the gardens, but there are some humanization initiatives in some hospitals where what is done is to take the patient to breathe fresh air, sometimes even with his bed. To intensive care patients, they take them with a bed with wheels. I have experienced it in person, and I can assure you that it is incredible, the results that are achieved in just 5 minutes doing this. And so much for this trip back in time. Fortunately, there are currently many institutions that are asking us to make therapeutic gardens in hospitals, nursing homes, disability centers, schools, companies, many more sites. As I always say, it's not that any pastime is better, but it's worth looking back a bit and seeing the things that have worked for centuries. you also have to combine it with the innovations and discoveries that our modern society has made over the centuries. By putting the two together, we can create environments that truly improve people's lives, which is what matters in the end. Subscribe too, hit the little bell if you don't want to miss the next videos. Thank you and have a nice day.